Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host. And for today's short little episode, I wanted to dive into the topic around designing a life that you actually want to live and designing what your dream life looks like. And this has been top of mind for me. And it's funny, I actually spoke about this with Tiffany, someone on my team. I was thinking about this recently because recently I was listening to an episode of mine on What Fulfills You from 2020. And for me, I did this because it was a refreshing way to gain insight into where I once was mentally and physically, and also just insight into where my head was at when it came to future me and where I thought I was going to be and whatnot. And something I remember that I did when I was around 24 years old, I wrote down my dream vision. And I actually wrote down my life at 24, life at 25, life at 26. And interestingly enough, a lot of the things on those lists actually ended up being true. I don't know if within the age time frame ended up being true, but now, like, looking back at those years, I can actually say that all of those things ended up being completed or true. And I want to actually revisit that. Not every single thing on the list of, like, okay, these things at 25, these things at 26, but in most cases it was like 80% ended up being like I got what I wanted. And so I was like thinking to myself, when was the last time I did an exercise like this? It's been a while. So I came home from traveling and sitting in my New York apartment, I wrote down, what does my dream vision look like? What does a perfect day to me look like? By the way, that question is in the What Fulfills You card game. It's something that I've thought of and have asked myself for years now before the card game was created, which is why it's part of the card game, because it's thought-provoking. It makes you actually think, if there were no limitations, what does a perfect day look like? For me, a perfect day would be getting up early around 6:30 a.m. I go to a workout at 7, whether that's Pilates or a long morning walk or Soul Cycle. And afterwards, I would get juice or coffee with a friend, a girlfriend of mine. We would chat, we would connect, we would talk about visions, dreams, life, maybe a little bit of just girl talk. And then I would come home, get ready, make my home look nice, whatever, and get ready to start my day work flowing by 10:30 or 11 a.m. And then I would end my day around 6:30 p.m., whatever the workflow looks like. I would love to work throughout the day doing the things that I enjoy. Podcasting is one of them. And at the end of the day, I would maybe have a cocktail or some sort of glass of wine, or just maybe, I don't know, something just very relaxing around 6:30 or 7. And that would also be with a partner, a loved one. And then I would share dinner with that person. And we would wrap up our day by like connecting more intimately, more just talking about how's our day been, how's our dream going, the visions, all of that. And would just be in bed with my partner, my best friend, by 10:30. That would be a perfect day to me. It's simple, it's realistic, and very doable, right? That's why it's interesting, because I notice some people get caught up on that question. They think that it's got to be a pretty absurd answer when we say perfect day. But to me, I bring a lot of realistic components to thinking about my perfect day and my dream life. And I look back at the track, the past few years of my life, from 22, graduating college, to where I'm at now. I have grown a lot. I've done a lot of different things. I've also had very slow growth spurts as well. I think from 22 to 25, I had massive growth. I was going upwards on a very fast pace. And I think from 25 to where I'm at now has been a little bit more uh like slow growth, but also a clear upward trajectory. So I think I'm on like the hill part, So it's a little bit slower. I'm not going as fast, which is totally fine. And that's why I wanted to revisit what my dream vision looks like. Am I still attuned to it? Am I still on board with it? And one thing that I noticed about myself, or just was able to internalize even more, is that my dream is to still live in New York, is still to have a home here, to build a life here to some degree, whatever that looks like. My dream is to also be able to live and have another life and have a second home in another place, like maybe for winter. So that could be like South Florida, that could be California, where I once lived, right? That could even be, if I'm really that ballsy, like it could be, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. And so those I noticed have those things haven't changed about my dream from a couple years ago. I wrote this down when I first moved to New York, that my dream is to eventually have a place here, to potentially build and raise a family here, or at the very least, maybe in the Northeast area, and to also still be bi-city or dual city, right? To have a place in another city. Maybe that's Miami, maybe that's LA. It used to be LA. I used to have the bi-coastal dream, and that's why I kind of loved listening to my episodes from 2020, because I might have alluded to this back then too. And so it's interesting, you guys, because you'll notice when you write these things down, when you speak about it out loud, you have a track record of saying the same thing over and over again. So you realize it's consistent. You realize it's a consistent desire. Something relevant, I think, when it comes to seeing how frequent you write or repeat the same thing that you want, right? So in my case, it's about creating a life in New York. I think, especially as women, and something I've learned from other women and people with more life experience than me, I've learned that it's really important to be attuned to those desires, because at some point, if you are not as aware of what those desires are, you can get a little bit lost in being sidetracked and pulled around and pushed around. It's kind of like that saying, right? If you don't dictate your life, someone else will, right? And so, considering this podcast is around creating a life that fulfills you, whatever that looks like to you, I think it's so important to highlight the fact that, in my experience, revisiting this topic made me more attuned to what those desires are. It also, I think, creates a level of confidence in, these are some of my non-negotiables, right? When I'm pursuing my personal dream, my personal vision, right? If some of these are my non-negotiables, or some of these things that I really want and need the people that are going to be in my life long term to be aligned with, what are those things, right? And that way too, you guys, when I think about, dating and navigating life in 20s, I think the less sharp we are about knowing what those things are. And again, I don't say this as a bad thing. I want to say as well, this is not a bad thing, but I will admit that when we're less sharp about that direction, we have a higher tendency to maybe waste time in places that we don't really need to waste time. And it's funny, as I think of this, I remember years ago when I was living in LA and was dating someone. It's actually funny, I mentioned him in my recent solo episode. This was about, this person that influenced me, in inspiring my move to Los Angeles. And I remember, while we had a lot of things aligned, something that he didn't love or care about as much was New York. And I remember, now, again, I think everything in life, right? There's compromises. And so there are certain things that maybe it's not New York, but maybe it's like something else that he didn't love or care about. And maybe it mattered to me, but maybe it didn't matter. Like it wasn't the top of the list, right? Those are things that you can and likely should find wiggle room, to compromise with, right? But there are certain things I think in life where maybe it's how you raise children, if that were to be a thing, or maybe it's just a certain set of values, or maybe it's where you want to, have a primary home base, for example, right? That could be the city, that could be the suburbs, that could be a more rural area. And, you know, uh, it's a lot easier to pair up with someone. I guess we're talking in the romantic sense, obviously, right? But to pair up with someone that aligns with those top things, and then things that are kind of in the middle of your list, they can fluctuate a little bit more because those are not as foundational to who you are as a person. So, all that to say, doing this exercise of writing down what my dream life looks like and what a perfect day to me would look like, it reminded me of those desires that has always been in Emily, number one. Number two, it also made me feel more attuned to what those desires, what those dreams are. I was like, wow, that's right. Like, this is still a dream of mine. Like, well, let's keep going, Emily. Like, let's keep going at it. Where do you need to pivot? What do you need to do differently? That kind of woke me up a little bit more. And I think thirdly, especially as women, for those of you guys listening, I think that when you are more aware of what these things are or what it is the life that you want to live, you're going to be stronger in holding your ground and being like, you know what? Let's just say whether it's with friends or with family or with a potential partner, when you're aware of these things, you're going to be like, I love my parents, for example, love mom and dad, but they just don't know me. They don't know my dreams. They don't know the interests that I have. And I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to go with the dreams that I have, and I'm going to go pursue that, even if that means that they're going to dislike my decision. They're going to maybe initially resent me for my decision, right? But that attunement to those desires, to that dream vision of yours, that is what will help propel you to stay grounded and firm in who you are and what you want. And like I said earlier, if you don't dictate where your life goes, someone else will, right? You are the driver. You are in the driver's seat. You are in control of your own direction. It's so important to feel so strong and certain behind that. And I want to say, if you're just starting today, right, and you realize, like, wow, okay, I don't really know what I want though. Work on that part first. And trust me, some things you won't know completely yet about what it is that you want. But as you start to write down the things without holding back, because I did these exercises without holding back. Like, I wrote down how my dream would be to have a New York loft, a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, maybe even a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bathroom home, okay, in New York. That's fucking audacious. The price is, depends on where, but some places I've seen it could be like 3 million, could be 2 million, depending on what I get, where it's, the whole 9 yards. Can I afford that now? No. But I'm not going to hold back from writing that down. I'm not going to hold back from writing down that's a dream vision. And then you tie in my other audacious dream of living dual city, right? Can I do that now? No. Has anyone in my family done it? No. Am I going to hold back from writing that vision down? Definitely not. And you know why, you guys? Especially when you live in a city like New York or any busy city where people are hustling and bustling and doing their thing, you can look around and you can find someone that is doing and living the life that you want. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, that pushes me. That tells me it is a reality that exists. There's nothing about the other people or other person that are doing or having that life. There's nothing about them that's starkly different from me that would enable only them to have it and not me. You know what I mean? When I compare myself to people, it pushes me because I always think to myself, you're human too, Emily. You can do it too. Why not you? That is always the question I have. Why not me too? So I want you to instill that in your head. Whatever your dream vision, your dream life looks like, start writing it down. Don't hold back. Don't tell yourself, "Oh man, that's like too big though." No, 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 no. Write it down and check in with yourself every week, every month. Are you going in that direction? Is it still aligned with what you want? Because that could change. Maybe you're like, well, I once thought I wanted this, but okay, I realized through the journey that this made me want this more, right? It's okay to pivot. Just check in with yourself. Make sure that you feel attuned and aligned to what you write down and keep revisiting that because over time you will find consistency and lean into that consistency. That is all I have for today's short and sweet episode. I hope this sparked some ideas, some inspiration and motivation for you as you are navigating through this week right now. I hope you guys are excited to hear the next one. I will be indulging in a little bit more solo episodes and sharing just some insights I've been learning over the past few months, over the past year, and some things I've been really wanting to share with this podcast. So thank you so much for being a frequent listener. For the card game, as I mentioned, that includes that question, what does a perfect life look like, or what does a perfect day look like to you with no limitations? You can find the card game online at whatfulfillsyou.com, and you can get 10% off with the code whatfulfillsyou10 at checkout. Again, everything is linked in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll chat with you all on Friday.